Hi, everybody. I want to say a few things about the GMA article and then talk a little bit about the readings that you have upcoming. So, first on the GMA article, this is one that people tend not to be super comfortable with, and a few of you have raised questions that maybe other people have had, so I wanted to kind of address them a little bit more generally to the whole class. One common thought is that GMA alone does not make a good employee, and of course that's true. Warren Buffett has this saying, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but he says, "You want your employees to be smart and hardworking, unless they're unethical, in which case you hope they're stupid and lazy." And so, there's a lot of wisdom there. And what he's saying is obviously, most important thing is ethics. If you've got somebody undermining your company or doing things unethically, that's going to be a problem in the long run, and that's something that you would prioritize above GMA. Along those same lines, I had a student a couple semesters ago who actually contacted the author of the GMA article, Frank Schmidt, and asked him, the kind of question that I get often, which is, GMA can't be the only thing, and of course, the author agreed. Frank Schmidt used to work for the General Motors Institute, and he said that whenever I encountered an older first-line supervisor with extremely high GMA, I could see why that person had not advanced despite his high GMA. Usually it was because of extreme neuroticism or high levels of anxiety. In some cases, it was a lack of ambition. He goes on to talk about the importance of conscientiousness. If you're unreliable, then GMA doesn't really do you much good. And then another thing that he mentioned is mental illness, that there were employees at General Motors who had some level of mental illness that allowed them to do an adequate job, but would prevent them from moving up the ladder. Another point that students make with some regularity about the GMA article, and this semester is no difference, is that they know somebody who's very smart but socially unskilled, and there's truth to this, to that criticism. There's some research that looks, if you classify people into kind of high social skill and low social skill, the relationship between GMA and job performance is really strong for people who have high social skill. So in other words, if you've got, and in this particular study, they also looked at salary. So high social skill, high intelligence, that is obviously a very desirable combination. And the research supports that and finds that people perform their jobs well and make good salary. On the other hand, with low social skill, the relationship between GMA and job performance is very modest, right? So if you're very smart but socially unskilled, that high GMA doesn't do you very much good. So I want to come back to that idea of social skill in a minute as we kind of preview the readings that you've got up for the next set of readings. But first I want to repeat something that I've said before, which is that I don't really believe that GMA is the most important criteria in making a hiring decision. I do believe it's the most underappreciated trait in making a hiring decision. People don't think about how smart a candidate is. It's just not something that we often think about. That said, at the end of the semester, some students will often say something to the effect of, "Listen, we've talked about all these things. How do I integrate everything that we've talked about this semester?" And my honest answer is that I don't expect anyone to use everything that we talk about this semester. I think about each week in the set of readings as a set of tools. I expect you to understand the tools. I don't necessarily expect you to use all of the tools. Some of the things we'll talk about you will find useful. I find GMA to be a useful tool in understanding job candidates and understanding acquaintances and colleagues and so forth. I think it's useful. as a tool of thought, and not and some of you apparently don't, and that's perfectly fine. I expect you to understand it, not necessarily to dig it, if you will. So a few thoughts on the next set of readings, which also deal with individual differences. There are two readings, and although they have merit in the context of personnel selection, I actually think about these two readings more in terms of, they are about individual differences, but they're more, I think, useful in thinking about your own career. I said I'd return to the topic of social skill, and so here we are. The first reading is called Do Chameleons Get Ahead? And it's about this trait called self-monitoring. Self-monitoring, we all know some people who are different. They act very differently depending on the social context. They're with a group of Republicans, and they espouse Republican beliefs. They're with their liberal friends, and then their views change. We all have seen people like this who have a flexible definition of who they are and who change from situation to situation. The term for that is self-monitoring, and the question that the article asks is, what's the relationship between self-monitoring, or being a chameleon, and getting ahead? And even though this is an individual difference, I think it's useful in thinking about your own career and the role that interacting with colleagues and has on one's career trajectory. So you'll probably be curious about where you fit in terms of self-monitoring, and I think I'll attach to the announcement in Canvas a self-monitoring scale where you can kind of assess where you fit relative to other people on self-monitoring. The second reading is about something called grit, and I acknowledge it's not easy to read. There's a lot of studies, but I think there's value in understanding what grit is. Perhaps in thinking about job candidates, but definitely in thinking about our own lives and careers. Whenever I read this article, I find myself wanting to do better and be more consistent and be more persistent in pursuit of my goals. So I hope that's the case for you as well. That's all. I promise to keep these videos short. So I'm at almost 8 minutes. Sorry, this is a little longer than usual, but I appreciate you watching, and keep up the good work.